Who's a good boy? What should we do today? Where are you going? Where are you going? Come here. Let's make a card. Come here. Can I have a kiss? Can I have a kiss? Oh, I love you. Oh, dang. Hi, this is Jenna with Brown Dog Craft Company, and today we're going to be using the Lawn Fawn Hive Five recently released stamp and die set, and there is a stencil that goes with this. We're not using that today, and some other die cuts, but today we're going to be using the stamp and die set, and we're going to be coloring with our Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. So what I'm doing here is I've stamped out all of the images using my No Line coloring ink, which it's a contour ink. It's like a light gray or light brown, and No Line coloring means that there is still a line, but you draw over it. So there isn't the traditional harsh stamped black line that you would color within. Instead, you use your markers to color over the stamped line. And it just gives you kind of like a softer look when you're finished coloring with your images. And I particularly love to use my Zig markers with No Line coloring. So there's lots of multiples of each image on this card. So I'm just going to show you the coloring for pretty much one of each of them. You'll get the idea of it, otherwise we'd be here all day coloring. So here I'm taking my darker marker and outlining the image and adding some shading with the dark marker, and then I'm going to come back in with my lighter marker and blend everything together, and then occasionally add some more dark marker if I feel like there needs to be some more shading. So the browns that I'm using for the branches, I used dark brown and mid brown. And then here for the leaves of the branches, I'm using light green and sage green. So light green is the outline, and then sage green here is what I'm using to blend everything together. So I did a total of 3 branches today. And then for the flowers, I'm using the same colors of green, so light green and sage green for the base. And then blending that all together. And then for the flower centers, I will use just a little bit of, oh, I didn't write it down. I think I used like a very pale yellow. And then the flowers themselves, I'm going to outline in azure blue and then start with some light blue and blend out with haze blue. Yeah, that looks pretty yellow, so I think that's just regular yellow. And then that is probably light yellow. So when you're outlining your images, you want to use a really light hand. It helps, it just makes it easier to just outline the image if you use a really light hand and go really slow. So this is sped up, this is double time. So I don't actually color this fast. So when you're coloring, just take your time and turn your paper as needed. So whichever way it feels more comfortable for you to draw the lines or color. And then particularly when you're coloring with Zigs or any other water-based marker, they take a little bit to dry. So I try to move the paper and keep my hand out of what I just colored, because I have smeared my images in the past, and then you just have to start over. So try to keep your hand out of whatever you've been coloring. It just takes a little bit for the ink to dry and be absorbed into the cardstock. So I think next we will color the beehives. Oh, I'll do the bees. Okay, so the bees here are yellow, and I did their stripes in yellow, and then I outlined the dark parts in natural gray and added the stripes with natural gray, and then filled in the face with some platinum brown, which platinum brown to me does not look brown, it looks gray. Maybe it looks more brown if you color it with browns, but that's one of my favorite colors. And then for the wings, I'm going to outline them in ice blue and fill them in with haze blue. So they'll be a really light blue color. Now when you're When you're coloring with zigs, paper is important. So my favorite paper to color with when I'm using my zigs is going to be, let me go grab it. It's all right, sorry about that. It's Strathmore Bristol Smooth. So it's different than what I use to color with my alcohol markers. I just find that I get the best results when I use this. So it comes in like a paper pad. I think it's 9x12 paper, and it has a yellow cover. And I will link everything on my blog, so you can go there. It's browndogcraftcompany.com, and when you go there, all the supplies will be listed, and you can click on them and it will bring you directly to them. So here for the beehives, I'm outlining them in light brown. And that's what I'm using right now. It's a very orangish, yellowish color. And then I'm taking bright yellow and blending that together. So I tried lots of different combinations for yellows on these beehives, and ultimately I liked the darker looking beehive best. So that's those are the two colors I chose. But if you wanted a more yellow beehive, you could definitely use some more yellows instead of using the light brown. Maybe use like bright yellow and yellow or something along those lines. So for the honey in the honey pots, I use the same color as the beehives, so light brown and bright yellow. And then the lid is going to be mid brown and beige. And then the label is going to be mustard and pale orange. And the label says honey. I did not trace over honey at all. I feel like when the ink dries, you can still see that it says honey fine. And then also for that little honey stick, I did that the same as the lid, so mid brown and beige. You could probably do just one color on that. It's a super teeny little image, but so trying to stick with some of the same colors I've already used in the card so we don't have too many contrasting colors here. And then once everything is colored, I'll give it maybe 5 or 10 minutes to fully dry. And then I cut it apart a little bit before I run it through the die cut machine, just so that I don't get any impressions from my plates into my images. So the more you use your die cut plates, the more they get imprinted or cut into, and then it's still fine. They work perfectly fine. They just can sometimes impress those cut lines into your paper if you run it through. So I die cut all of those out and set them aside. So now here I have my Stick and Stamp mat by Simon Says Stamp and Brutus Monroe, and I've got a slimline panel here. I just used Bristol Smooth again because that's what I had out. And here I've got Lawn Fawn's Grassy stencil, and I'm going to line that up so that it's going to cover and mask off what's going to be the sky, and just excuse me, just leave that section down at the bottom there open. So I'm going to use some Distress Oxide ink. I'm going to use Mold Lawn, and I'll start onto the stencil and then bring it onto the paper, and I'll do a heavier hand toward the top of the grass and lighten it as it goes down. And then what's really fun about these stencils is you flip them over and they become a mask for what you just ink blended. So you can ink blend your grass, and I'm going to clean up the stencil just a little bit so I don't get ink everywhere. But you stencil your grass, and then you flip your stencil around, and it covers up exactly what you just did. So I'll stick that down, and then I'm going to take Tumbled Glass and the Cloudy stencil from Lawn Fawn, and I will start at the very top, and I'll start onto the stencil and bring it onto the paper. And then I'll rotate the stencil as I go down so that I get different cloud lines. So when you're ink blending with your Distress Oxides, you want to make sure you use different blending brushes than what you would use for your dye inks. And that's because Distress Oxides have a unique pigment characteristic to them. And it's just a good idea to not mix that into your dye inks and vice versa. So either clean your blending brushes really well before and after, or I have a random set of brushes. It's not a set. I just have random brushes that I've accumulated over the years, you know, onesie twosies here and there. And I use those for my Distress Oxides only. So I keep them in a separate spot in my craft room and save my other brushes for all of my other inks. I believe this stencil you can also get in a slimline version. The same with the grassy stencil too. So, and the ink I used for stamping the images is by Hero Arts. It's their contour ink. I do like that one. Another one that I know a lot of people use, and I do have but I couldn't find, is Lawn Fawn Jellyfish. And I'd say that gives you maybe a lighter impression than the one that I had. So I know it's really hard to see on camera, the stamped image, but in person it's much easier to see. So either one of those inks would work great. So there we go, there's the panel. I'm going to bend my stamp and stencil mat pretty much completely in half to get my paper off. That way it won't bend my cardstock. So I think this is looking really cute, but it needs something. So I'm going to pull out, this is I call it my splatter box. It's just a plastic bin that I lost the lid to a long time ago. And as you can see, it's pretty dirty. I don't clean it that often, but every time I'm going to splatter, I put my cardstock or whatever it is into this box, and it helps contain the splatter because splatter goes everywhere. So here I've got some liquid stardust by Lawn Fawn. I'm just going to squeeze that into the box and then tap my paintbrush all over, on the grass, on the sky, everywhere. And so this is sort of like a gold shimmer. So that doesn't take long to dry, maybe 5 minutes. So then here I'm going to pull all of the images back in. As you can see, I colored them all, die cut them all, and they're all ready to go. So I like doing things in threes or fives. I don't know why, it's just tends to be pleasing to the eye, and that's what I generally end up going with. So here I'm gonna sort of lay out where I think the branches should go without sticking them down, and then glue down the beehives. And then once I have the beehives put down, then I'll go ahead and put down the branches with some foam squares. So the beehives are glued directly to the card, and I'm trying to only add foam squares behind where it's going to touch the cardstock panel because we're going to cut everything else off. And then here I'll take the flowers and line those up at the bottom, some with liquid glue and some I'll pop up. Now I will say at the very end, and even in the photos, there's 5 flowers, and I used my black gel pen to add some little detail to the top yellow part of the flowers, and I only did it to 4 of them, and I didn't realize that I only did it to 4 of the 5 flowers until I was adding the card photo to the video. So in the video and in the photo, you're going to see that one of the flowers is missing black dots, but in real life, it is now there. There's black dots on all of the flowers now. So whoever gets the card, it will look finished. Although I doubt anyone else would notice those things. We do because we make the card and we're super picky, but I don't think anyone else would notice or care. So here I added the honey pot down to the bottom with a foam square and that little honey stick right next to it. And then in the Hive 5 stamp set, there are these cute little bee trails. So I took my clear block and I'm using VersaFine black and stamping that, and then adding the bees with some foam squares. And so I think I did 3 bees. And then here I'll put down the branches here. And then we'll have to decide what to do for sentiments. So there are some really cute ones in this set. And I think I want this to be a birthday card. So first I'm going to add some gel pen highlights to the beehives and the honey pot. And I'll do all of the leaves, including the leaves on the flowers. So no real science here to where I put the highlights, just wherever I thought they would look good. I'm sure there is a science about where the light comes from and what's darkest, and I don't pay too much attention to that. So here's where I'm adding the black gel pen, and as you can see, I missed that flower on the right. So I'll cut off everything that's hanging off the edges except for that one branch, because I think it's gonna fit on the card when I put it on the card base. I thought I might squeeze that little bee on the bottom, but decided not to. Okay, so here I'm going to take a scrap of Bristol Smooth cardstock again, just because that's what I have out. And I'll put that in my MISTI, and we're going to stamp our sentiments. So I'm going to use the Distress Oxide Tumble Glass and Mold Lawn. And in the blue here it says From the Whole Hive. And in green it says Happy Bee Day. So it'll say Happy Bee Day from the Whole Hive. So I'm going to let that ink dry for a few minutes. And then I'm going to take my sentiment label dies and line them up and cut them out. So while I wait for that ink to dry, I'm going to take my double-sided tape. I really love the Altenew tape. Not only is it super sticky, but the back comes off really easily. So I'm going to take and add that to the back of the card, and also I've got some Nina Desert Storm cardstock that I trimmed down, and I'm going to add the card front to that panel, and then that panel will go on our slimline card base. And my slimline card base today is from Simon Says Stamp, but there are lots out there, or you can make your own too. So here when I have the sentiment label, I prefer to use the sentiment labels over my paper trimmer, just because I like the little edge that the sentiment labels give your die, or give your cardstock. So I just line it up and run it through ever so slightly on the other side to get it fully cut out. So here I've got some thin foam squares, foam strips. I'll put on the back of that. And then I'll use my reverse tweezers to help me here line up these. So I think we'll put From the Whole Hive down about halfway through the card, and then Happy Bee Day over up a little bit to the right. Really cute. I think I got them on straight. And then this is a embellishment wheel. It's from Etsy, and they're little clay hearts, and they are my absolute favorite. I think they have them in like pastels and neons and other colors too. So I pulled out some blue, and I'm going to add, I think I add 5 blue hearts. There I go with the odds again. And then I'll glue those all down. Use my embellishment wand to help pick those up since they're so little. And then I'm going to take glossy accents, and I'm going to add those to the wings of all the bees. So this will go on a little bit cloudy, but when it dries it's completely clear and it has like a harder finish. So it makes them look like cute little wings. All right, and that is the card for today. It was super fun to make. This set is super adorable. I hope you, if you don't have it, I hope you can find something similar and make something like this. It's super fun to craft on a slimline card base, and it was great to share this with you today. Have a good day.